I'm going to do a little test here. I'm up at the California Supreme Court, and I was in Sonoma earlier this morning, and we had a granted media request. And this is the case that I'm coming up to pull documents from. Hi, John Denicola. Nice to see you. Can you guys hear me okay? Because I'm using my AirPods. I don't have my microphone. I'm not recording from outside, so it should be okay. Great. Okay, good. We're trying this. I do not, going in and out of courthouses when you have cameras today, even with a granted media request, it wasn't easy to get the cameras in and out. So when I'm looking to be in and out getting documents, I don't typically bring bigger cameras or microphones. So I just wanted to go over this case because this morning I was in a case involving Mark the Process Server, and I'll have video on that later. It was up in Sonoma County. And what we did in that case was I got a media request granted, which that's something that never happens in Santa Clara County. So this is San Francisco, California, and behind me back there is the California Supreme Court Clerk's office, where I just pulled this from. And right now there is a lawsuit filed in the California Supreme Court that says that not providing court reporters is unconstitutional. And they estimate that approximately 1 million hearings a year are happening in California without a court reporter. And they're blaming it somewhat on the court reporter shortage, but we have found that a lot of court reporters are going into private judging. So I came up to pull the documents because today LA and Santa Clara County had to file documents, but they didn't do it. So I'll have to get it later. You have to get those documents only in person. So I thought I would show you what this looks like. So now I'm going to turn the camera around. I can see your messages. There's not a lot of background noise. So then I'm going to take you outside for a bit, but here we go. This is the California Supreme Court. And so when you want to appeal your decisions or come about a bad attorney, because the California Supreme Court is in charge of attorneys too, these are the judges that decide the orders. They decide if the courts of appeal are upholding the law, and they also decide issues related to judges and attorneys. So I just thought I would show you what this looks like. This is very old San Francisco. So a lot of the architecture and everything is along that vein. They have this display out here for women judges. And I want to talk about that a little bit because right now I'm working on a case involving a disqualification of Judge Cindy Hendrickson. And she is a judge who was elected during the Me Too movement. And when she was elected to office, she got some social media attention that just felt a little bit odd. And so there's a disqualification against her right now, and we're following that case. And that case is supposed to get sent to another judge to decide because Cindy Hendrickson answered it. This is the First District Court of Appeal. So if you're in San Francisco, Sonoma, Marin, and you need to appeal a trial court decision, this is where you come. And then if you want to appeal that court's decision, you go to the Supreme Court. And I have been, if you watch some of my old videos, you'll see one of me coming out of this elevator where Garrett Daly hit my camera and was upset when I started talking about all the money they were making in private judging. And that happened right here. So upstairs through those elevators is where the courts actually hear the business in the Court of Appeal for the First District, but these are the clerk's offices. And then the California Supreme Court is held upstairs through that building, and this is a state building. So if you'll notice, I'm actually recording outside the clerk's office, and inside the clerk's office of the California Supreme Court, the First District Court of Appeal, and their exhibits, and I'm allowed to do that. But we're not allowed to record in the trial courts. So think about that. And now we're talking court reporters with this case that I came up to see today, because LA Superior Court and Santa Clara County Superior Court have been sued about that. So we're talking disqualifications, court reporters, and I just pulled some documents on a public official in Santa Clara from his divorce case up in San Francisco, and I want to talk about that a little bit. So anybody who follows this channel knows that I am laser focused on the issues of domestic violence restraining orders and civil harassment restraining orders that end up costing people a lot of money. They get a piece of paper. In California, it removes your right to have guns. And some of those cases are happening because the lawyers make a lot of money on it. It doesn't necessarily have a lot to do with safety or anything else. And so we're looking at that, and we're looking at, oops, is this not? Thank you, appreciate it. Automatic door, you're not allowed to open your doors here, I guess. Thank you, you too. And by the way, this is the first day of spring. So I just want to show you walking out of those buildings. That's City Hall in San Francisco. When you go there, you'll see a lot of weddings and things like that. That's the family court where I just went to pull those records on a public official. So the public official was running for San Jose City Council, and somebody pointed out that he had a domestic violence restraining order. Now, there is a difference between a domestic violence restraining order for a public official and for Joe Blow. If you are a Joe Blow or a Jane Blow and you get a restraining order, then you can't own guns, and you also aren't employable in a lot of places. For instance, if you get a restraining order and you're a nurse or a cop, or you are I'm zooming in on people as they're going back and forth to City Hall. If you're a cop, in fact, I have a great video that I took just a little while ago of a police officer over there talking about that he intends to stay married because he works in family court. And I do cover a lot of if you ever want to come to San Francisco and be a tourist, you can get on one of those big buses and ride around and see all the sites, or you can come to YouTube and I'll give you a tour of San Francisco for free. That's what tourists do. This is first day of spring in March, and this is the weather in San Francisco is pretty nice right now, and this is what it looks like. So I'm going to go back to this restraining order issue. So this public official was running for San Jose City Council, and somebody leaked me his restraining order. And if he had not been a public official, I probably wouldn't have done anything about it, and I would have thought I really don't trust restraining orders. I don't believe that they keep people safe. I don't believe that they're gotten for the right reasons. And I think that lawyers have hijacked the process to make a lot of money, and they ruin a lot of lives and take away a lot of rights in the process. So, but in this case, the reason that I got it was because he not only had a domestic violence restraining order against him, but he hadn't paid his child support. And I know a lot of you out there have had problems with child support. We talked about that. But they were putting him in charge of planning and building permits in San Jose. He was on the planning commission. He was running for city council. And there were reports that he was asking for bribes. And so I thought it was newsworthy to talk about his divorce case. And they also put him on a board for Happy Hollow, which is a little children's park in San Jose. And I do think that if somebody has a court action against them and something in their history and they're running for public office, that we have a right to know it. We have a right to know what his wife said about him, and not just the court's decision, but what people think about that, and if that's the person that you want representing you in public office. And the same is true for women. And I will say that when I started with family court and covering that, I didn't have experiences with women with severe mental health issues and severe abuse issues. And I didn't really understand how that could play out for people. And I have a new empathy for that. I think that the women, as we were just seeing the women judges, um, Cindy Hendrickson has done a lot of damage to both men and women as a judge. And it appears that she has been dishonest in her answers and her rulings, and she sat on political committees. And again, if you're a judge or a public official, I think that's fair game. And I think the Constitution intends for it to be fair game. So we're talking about what's in people's backgrounds. You often see people run for judge or for public official, and they put pictures of their spouse and their children to give the image that they're, this happy nuclear family. And if there is something in the background on that that's different than the optics, I think the people have a right to know that. And so we've been investigating a lot of family court cases. And I was just talking to the bailiff. I couldn't record the conversation we had inside, but I recorded the conversation we had outside. But inside, we were talking about what they see in court every day. And he asked me about what I see. And I think the worst divorce cases that I see are the ones that involve police officers, judges, and lawyers. And of those, the ones involving attorneys is the worst. Because what attorneys are willing to do to a former spouse is really something that is the court shouldn't allow to go on. So we're going to continue to keep talking about the restraining orders, the court reporter issue. And I like giving you on Friday afternoon a little bit of a look at where I am and what I'm doing. I do love that City Hall building. It's gold top and it's old San Francisco. And it's a really, really beautiful building. And I thought I would show you because when I run around, you don't normally see what I'm doing when I'm pulling records. So my video, either late tonight or tomorrow, probably tomorrow, will be of the court hearing that I got a media request granted today in, and there was not a court reporter. So that was why I came up here afterwards to pull the paperwork in this court reporter case. So one more time, we're going over California not having court reporters in 1 million hearings a year. And these are typically in family law cases, and they are also in cases involving low or moderate income families that can't afford court reporters. And for those of you who don't understand, a court reporter, right now in Santa Clara County, if you want a court reporter for one of your hearings, then you have to pay minimum of $700 to have the court reporter show up. And some of the court reporters charge $1,200. And then after that, you have to, after you pay that fee, you have to pay for the transcript. And again, yes, the court reporters have a copyright on the transcript they create. Even though you pay them, even though it's a public proceeding, California law allows them to own the copyright just as if they had written a book, and they get to then charge for those transcripts. So I want all of you to think about, just imagine one hearing. And in today's divorce cases, it used to be 1 to 2 hearings and you were divorced. I see them have 50, 75, 100, 200, 205 hearings. And if you're paying for a court reporter for all of that, imagine that cost. In Sonoma today, I met a mom who is on supervised visits. And this is a new one. I want to tell about this real quick because every day when I go and I do media requests and talk to people at the courts, I learn something. And so I want to tell you about this. Whenever somebody says they can't do that, I always remind them that I'll find them a case where they can do just about anything they want. So this, Johnny Denicola, they're absolutely double, triple dipping. The court reporters that get paid by the court are public employees, so they don't get that $700, $1,200, but they do get paid for the transcripts. So, okay, let's go back to the Sonoma mom. So the Sonoma mom had an autistic child, and I want to say I was very fortunate. I had healthy children, normal childhoods. They were beating each other up and getting stitches once in a while, falling out of trees. But for the moms and dads out there that have to deal with an autistic child, that is a rough job. And my hat is off to all of you. But dealing with an autistic child in family court is a nightmare. And what they did to her was they put her on supervised visits because she was advocating for her child too much. And so on supervised visits, I asked her how long it's been since she's seen her child. And she told me that she hasn't because it would cost her $1,600 a month to have these supervised visitation providers watch her interact with her child. Now, these are all family court created costs. Supervised visitation providers, transcripts for court reporters, and it goes on. Parenting coordinators are the new scam. There's custody evaluators, forensic accountants. Um, I could just go on and on. Every time I turn around, there's a new title and a new charge. And if you're just trying to pay your mortgage and raise your kids and do your work, how are you going to afford all of that? And the courts are getting worse. They're not getting better. And for the low and moderate income people, they aren't even providing the court reporters anymore. We're going backwards. So we're going to continue to cover this because it does feel like an unconstitutional. The courts are engaged in violating due process and unconstitutional hearings that are not historically documented by court reporters. So that's why I'm up here today. I did meet a lot of other people in Sonoma about custody and court reporters. And I got a media request granted. That's my second granted in Sonoma County. So just to remind you, a media request is what's made by a journalist, a reporter, somebody who is connected either independently or to a news organization, and they make media requests to be able to photograph and record the hearing. And I know that, hang on, let's let that pass. I know that down in Santa Clara County today that there is a big hearing in the Richard Farley case, and the DA is trying to overturn a death penalty case related to a mass unliving event that happened at an old, I think it was a tech plant, one of the first cases. And District Attorney Rosen has been violating crime victims' rights. And so those crime victims got a little spicy, and today they're all reading their victim statements in court. And when people do go into criminal court and there's a conviction, in California, we have a law that says victims have a right to make statements. Victims have a right to have notice of hearings. And we watch for that because if the district attorney and the judge is not respecting those rights, they probably weren't respecting the rights of the defendant to have a fair trial. So that's the kind of stuff we look at. Today in Santa Clara, they did grant media requests, but they did not allow cameras. So there's only going to be audio and transcripts of the proceedings. And I do understand some wisdom in not having cameras on people who are in a trauma moment, but I also understand that these are historical proceedings, and if we don't have court reporters and we don't have cameras, they're not being documented and they won't even have existed in a few years. So that's what I fight for. I'm going to read a little bit your comments. We covered court reporters today. We covered crime victims' rights. We covered custody evaluators, supervised visitation providers, and that was just before I go back to my car. So I appreciate all of you. I'll read all of your comments when I get back. If anyone has a pressing question before I hit end. We've been on for a few minutes and I don't want to go too long, but I thank you all for being here. Right now we have 83 people watching on the middle of the first Friday of spring. And so when we're done, I hope you guys are going to go do something fun because it's a beautiful day, and happy spring, everyone.